thank you everyone for taking the time to share Dharma together, and something so precious as the Heart Sutra. So this moment, let it not be wasted on us, for just how truly precious it is, how incredibly blessed and fortunate we are. And so just letting that sink in. Whoa. And coming together so that we can bring understanding to what we recite in many of our classes, the Heart Sutra. But, sometimes it becomes mere words because we can't bring the meaning. And so we're very fortunate to be able to access teachings everywhere, online and in person, on the Heart Sutra, so that we can bring to mind the essence, the heart of the practice. And I'd like to start with prayers to make sure we go in a good way. And then I want to talk a little bit about compassion. Okay, so let's start with the prayers. Now, we can imagine for this Heart Sutra that we are in the presence of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha. And remember, the whole purpose of refuge and all the teachings, 84,000 teachings of the Buddha, were for the purpose of liberation, for us, to liberate us and all sentient beings from all suffering and its causes. So this is the purpose, and it's good not to water down the Dharma, just seeking the happiness of this life and things like this. So, allowing that sacredness of the purpose of Dharma to be present. In the presence of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, we can see ourselves as sitting at Vulture's Peak, Rajgriha, where the Heart Sutra teachings were given, in the presence of Venerable Shariputra, who asked the question to Arya Avalokiteshvara about how to train on the stages of the path, the Mahayana path of accumulation, right through to the path of no more learning. And so we can be there witnessing the unfolding of this Heart Sutra teaching by the Buddha. And going for refuge, reliance, not only on the outer refuge, but our own inner refuge, our own Buddha Dhamma Sangha, that we will become independence on, relying on the outer Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Seeing this mutual dependence, reliance. And the actual refuge, the Dharma jewel, our medicine, pure nectar, to overcome all our suffering, not only the problems of today, this lifetime, but our beginningless lifetimes and future lifetimes, to be free of karma and afflictions, and all the permeations of suffering produced by them in various realms of existence, in various forms of experiencing what we don't want, and bereft of what we do seek. So with this self-compassion, wanting to be free of suffering and its causes, wanting to be free of true suffering and true origins, self-compassion, renunciation, and then turning the spotlight away from ourselves to focus on all other sentient beings with the same heartfelt wish for them to be liberated from suffering and its causes. So from renunciation to great compassion. And reflecting on the immeasurable kindness of others, the cause of our very attainments, happiness, temporary happiness, ultimate happiness. We can take responsibility, a strengthened form of great compassion that seeks that I myself alone will make this happen to free all beings from suffering and its causes. This is the purpose of utilizing this precious human rebirth. But right now, we can barely even free ourselves from suffering. And so we must develop that altruistic mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. Because when we actualize bodhicitta and the stages of the path and become Buddha, even along the stages of the path, we can be benefiting extensively in limitless ways. There's a fully ripened Buddha with all the qualities. You can know exactly in each moment, without hesitation or even thought, how to benefit them and liberate them and bring them to enlightenment. And all this is possible because things lack inherent existence, because things depend, are dependently arisen. Therefore, such transformations, developments of our Buddha potential to the actualized Buddhahood is all possible. And so with as much as the three principal aspects in mind, we can go for refuge. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. And so then invoking Guru Manjushri, you can imagine on the crown of your head, purifying rays of nectar and white rays of light, purifying any hindrances, obstacles, to receive the teachings, to be able to understand them, put them into practice, take them to heart and really develop them. And then when we get to the mantra, we can do maybe 21 times and just change the color of the light to golden nectar and light rays to bring in all the blessings and to achieve the realizations of exactly what the Heart Sutra is guiding us to realize. Obeisance to my Guru and Protector Manjushri, who holds at his heart a scriptural text symbolic of his seeing all things as they are, whose understanding shines forth as a sun, unclouded by defilements or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways with the patient love of a father for his only son, all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering. You whose dragon thunder proclamation of the Dharma arouses us from the stupor of our delusions and frees us from the iron chains of our karma, whose powerful sword of wisdom hews down suffering wherever its sprouts appear, clearing away the darkness of all ignorance. I entreat you, O Manjushri, whose princely body is adorned with 112 marks of a Buddha, who has completed the 10 stages, achieving the highest perfection of a bodhisattva, who has been pure from the beginning. O Manjushri, O loving one, with the brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom so that I may gain insight into the Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. Oma Rapasanadi, Oma Rapasanadi, Oma Rapasanadi. Omarapasanati. You can even imagine Manjushri absorbs into us so that he is helping us throughout the entire practice. And I don't know who it was in the first week. Hey, Dan. Dan's here. Hey, man. From Australia. So I don't know if it was, actually, I can't remember who it was, but someone said, what's the importance of Avalokiteshvara conducting this conversation? And I thought that was a really good question. And I didn't really have time to really think about it so much at the time, and hadn't seen, information that would help me on why that would be so, that I could learn from others. And thinking about it more on the weekend, what came to mind strongly is we talk about Avalokiteshvara being like, although he appears as a 10th ground bodhisattva during the time of the Heart Sutra, during the time of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, but he's a Buddha in actuality, right? So Avalokiteshvara Chenrezig is the embodiment of all the Buddha's compassion. And so compassion is obviously supremely important when we're talking Mahayana practice, because it's from our self-compassion, renunciation, that we develop great compassion for all sentient beings, wanting them to be free of suffering and its causes, strengthen that great compassion into this altruistic, highest intention, this laksam, and then from there, bodhicitta, and then, from there into the Mahayana path when it becomes uncontrived, and then attain all the, various stages of the grounds and paths, bringing together this conventional mind of enlightenment with the ultimate mind of enlightenment, this non-conceptual realization of emptiness from the path of seeing onwards. And so these two together are, enhancing each other in their potency, is strong enough to then not only overcome the afflictive obscurations, but also the knowledge obscurations, that which hinders omniscience, these knowledge obscurations. And so this compassion obviously plays a massive role, particularly in the Mahayana, developing it to its utmost strength. And what came to mind just yesterday was Chandrakirti, in his supplement to the Middle Way, talks about, in the first verse, talks about how hearers and middling realizes of suchness, these arhats, Hinayana arhats, are born from the speech of the Buddha. The Buddhas are born from bodhisattvas, not only the bodhisattva in their own continuum that they will become when they attain Buddhahood, so born from bodhisattvas in that way, but also the bodhisattvas around them that help them to attain, the stages of the path up to enlightenment. So then what are the causes of bodhisattvas? If Buddhas come from bodhisattvas, what are the causes of bodhisattvas? And it outlines three main causes. And this is the mind of compassion, non-dual understanding, conceptual realization of emptiness, and the altruistic mind of enlightenment, this contrived mind of enlightenment. These are the causes by which one will develop them. And once it becomes that uncontrived mind of enlightenment, one becomes a bodhisattva and enters the Mahayana path of accumulation. And so in verse 2, Chandrakirti, he says that mercy, so compassion, mercy alone is seen as the seed of a conqueror's rich harvest, as water for development, and as ripening in a state of long enjoyment. Therefore, at the start, I praise compassion. So Chandrakirti prays, instead of, the omniscient one, Shakyamuni Buddha, or Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so forth, praise compassion. And so this was quite unique, but he was really pointing to the importance of compassion in the beginning, so that we can, develop the marvelous qualities to lead to enlightenment, and, taking that responsibility and so forth. But also, once we've entered the Mahayana path of accumulation with this uncontrived bodhicitta and become a bodhisattva, we really need to strengthen it again and again and again. And it becomes like from a seed that takes sprout. We need to water it. We need to water it again and again for its development and its higher increase. so that we don't fall into a lesser vehicle. We stay on the Mahayana path. And then when we can grow this compassion, this strength of our bodhicitta, when we can amass through its development the two collections of merit and wisdom, then what we can do from seed to water to a state of like a ripened fruit. So this state of ripeness, and then what that means is at the time of Buddhahood, then what we can do when it fruits from a seed watering development into this ripened fruit for for the benefit of sentient beings, for as long as sentient beings remain, therefore, remain in samsara and so forth, in a state of non-Buddhahood, Buddhas can benefit them. So this ripening of a fruit in a state of long enjoyment, as long as it takes, as long as sentient beings are in samsara, for that long, the Buddha will work for their welfare. So this compassion is, so necessary for its development to become Buddha. And I wonder if that's the importance of emphasizing Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion, giving this dialogue, with Shariputra, answering Shariputra's questions about how a Mahayana bodhisattva traverses the 5 stages. So anyway, some food for thought. Who knows? Okay, so I'll just go in and have a look at what we're going to do this week, because the last couple of weeks, hang on a sec, I've just got to get this. Oh my, I'm sorry, I was already sharing, was I? I imagined I stopped sharing. So anyway, so let's go to the beginning of the recitation, and then we can go to the path of meditation, because the first week we looked at the path of accumulation preparation, and then we looked at the fourfold understanding of emptiness, form is emptiness, and form is empty, emptiness, form, and so forth. Then last week we looked at the path of seeing and the 8 profound points, and now I want to look at the path of meditation this session. So let's recite up to the beginning of the path of meditation, and then we'll jump into exploring the meaning. So firstly, as spoken by the Buddha's son, Rahula, the praise to the perfection of wisdom that precedes the recitation of the Heart Sutra. The indescribable, inconceivable, and inexpressible perfection of wisdom, unproduced, unceasing, the nature of space, object of the uniquely knowing transcendental wisdom, to the mother of the victorious ones of the 3 times I prostrate. See if you can pay attention to the headings in yellow, although we won't recite them, but they're just to guide us in the understanding as we proceed. I prostrate to the 3 noble, rare, sublime ones. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagawan was dwelling on Massive Vulture's mountain in Rajgriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly, beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. And so we'll look at, we might as well just read it. So this is going to be the path of meditation we're going to look at in detail. Shariputra, therefore in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell on the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. So we'll stop there, which is getting to just before the mantra. And we'll go, so we've been through all of these sections previously. We're still on the extensive answer, this time looking at the path of meditation. So the path of meditation, so this is where one has already from the path of seeing non-conceptually realized emptiness directly, right? Free of a generic image where only emptiness appears and there's no dualistic appearances whatsoever of any subject and object as, being distinct, or appearances of inherent existence or any conventionality even appearing. So it's only emptiness that appears. And so on the path of meditation, one is habituating, familiarizing with this, view of emptiness. And so on the path of seeing, we've abandoned the intellectually acquired afflictive obscurations, the seeing abandonments. Now from the path of seeing, we have the actual antidote for the innate afflictive obscurations across the first 7 paths. And then at the end of the 7th path, we've abandoned, we've got the antidote present. So we could say by the 8th ground, we've abandoned fully afflictive obscurations. And on the 8th, 9th, and 10th, they're pure grounds, pure because we've abandoned afflictive obscurations. So we still have then to abandon the knowledge obscurations across the 8th, 9th, and 10th grounds to then attain the state of enlightenment. So this path of meditation, we're habituating again and again until all of the obscurations have been abandoned completely. And, when not in meditative equipoise, non-conceptually realizing emptiness, then the bodhisattva is accumulating merit, practicing the 6 perfections, and, benefiting sentient beings in that way. So when we look at the path of meditation, and that's part of the verse we've just read already, what we're saying here in the Heart Sutra is for that meditative equipoise in the sight of that Arya from the path of seeing, we're now on the path of meditation, in the sight of that Arya's exalted knowledge of meditative equipoise, non-conceptually realizing emptiness. In the sight of that Arya being's exalted knowledge, the wisdom mind, exalted knowledge of meditative equipoise, non-conceptually realizing emptiness, in the sight of that, in the sight of that, on the uninterrupted path of the Mahayana path of meditation, there is, in the sight of that, the 5 aggregates, these, as well as the 12 sources, as well as the 18 elements and so forth, these do not appear. There's the non-observing. So hence there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. These 5 aggregates are not observed. They're not appearing. Not only is the inherent existence of form, the inherent existence of feeling, aggregate, discrimination, so forth, not appearing, but for us sentient beings, this inherently existent appearance of these 5 aggregates and the 5 aggregates themselves, which conventionally exist, they're so fused together that when we investigate, do the five aggregates inherently exist? Not only does the appearance of inherent existence not appear, but because it's so fused with even the actual conventionally existing five aggregates, not even the conventionalities appear. So at that stage, realizing the lack of inherent existence, only the lack of inherent existence appears, the emptiness of inherent existence appears. Nothing other than that, not even the exalted knower, the exalted knowledge, the wisdom mind appears. So not even a conventionality of the mind appearing, and the mind that's realizing emptiness. The mind is like pure water mixed with pure water. So subject and object are totally like indistinguishable. So there's no duality. There's no subject and object as distinct. There's no appearances of inherent existence. We've got the powerful antidote, realizing the lack of inherent existence. And so that's what is appearing. There's no conventionality appearing. So it's just what is observed is only this lack of inherent existence, this emptiness, this non-affirming negation. There is nothing affirmed appearing at that time. And so whether we look at no form, no feeling, etc., or no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. So these sense powers, to realize an object, we need the sense powers, we need the object, and we need the consciousness. And so when we talk about the six sense powers and the six objects, we're talking about the physical sense powers, the eye sense power, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body sense powers, and also the mental sense power. And we're talking about their individual objects of form and sound and smells and tastes and touch and so forth, tactile objects. And for the mental, we call phenomena. The object is a phenomenon. So even these are not observed. So whatever we grasp at, whether it be the eye in dependence on the aggregates, or our relationship with everything in, regarding forms, sounds, and sights, and smells, and tastes, and all of these things, whatever object we try to cling to and grasp at, that appears to us to inherently exist when we're not in this meditative equipoise. Hence why, apart from this meditative equipoise, non-conceptually realizing emptiness, every other mind is mistaken. So every one of our consciousness is mistaken because things appear to inherently exist when we engage objects, whether it be internal objects, external objects, whatever we try to grasp at. So the 12 sources, we look at the sense powers and the objects. These are the 12, 6 and 6. When we include the consciousnesses as well, adding another 6 type of primary consciousnesses, then we're talking about the 18 elements. So I'll have a look at that with you on the next slide when I go into a little bit more detail. So all phenomena lack inherent existence. So the meditative equipoise trying to realize, searching, do things inherently exist, do the aggregates inherently exist, and so forth. What it finds is that they don't inherently exist because inherent existence does not appear when it is searched for. What does appear is only the lack of inherent existence. So inherent existence is not found. What is found is the lack of inherent existence, the emptiness of inherent existence. So there's no appearances of inherent existence, no dualistic appearances of subject and object, and so forth, no conventionalities, all of this. So let's look in more detail at these 12 sources and then the 18 elements so that they become quite clear, hopefully, to some degree clear. So the 6 powers, for instance, the eye sense power, that's like a very subtle form that comes together. It's located in the eye organ, and independence on the sense power coming together with an object of form and the eye consciousness, then we're able to realize form. We're able to realize computer or, whatever we have in front of us right now. So same with the very subtle matter that is the ear sense power. When it comes together, located in the ear organ, and it's undamaged and so forth, then when we come together with an object of sound and an ear consciousness, we can realize sound. Okay, so these are the way, I'll just reveal there, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body sense powers, these five physical powers, five sense powers or five sense faculties, different translations, coming together with to meet their object, their individual object form. The ear realizes sound, it doesn't realize taste. So these individual sense powers, when they're undamaged, realize their objects in dependence on their consciousness. Okay, so and then the mental sense power realizes its object phenomena. We can bring to mind our car and where it is right now and so forth, various, memories and whatever. With our mind, we can realize objects, independence on a mental consciousness. So this is what we're talking about with the six powers, the six objects. These comprise the 12 sources, okay? When we add together the six consciousnesses to the 12 sources, then we talk about the 18 elements or the 18 constituents. So it doesn't matter whatever object we grasp at, whether it be form, sound, smells, taste, whatever it be, tactile sensations, the touch of a warm body next to us or whatever that might be. And then in dependence on that, mistakenly, apprehending them to inherently exist independently, as if they are self-establishing, self-instituting, not merely labeled, but actually as if there's some, something coming from the side of the object that exists by way of its own characteristics as that thing that, from that side of the object, as if it exists as that in some sort of independent, inherent way. When we don't investigate and we just trust in our appearances, that's how everything appears to us. But when we investigate, then it's a totally different story, because what we find is the lack of that self-instituting, inherent existence, that independent existence. What we start to realize when we investigate with our wisdom mind is actually how appearances are false, that things do not exist in the way they appear. How do they exist? They do exist. They don't exist from their own side. So how do they exist? They exist by being merely labeled outwardly in one direction from the mind. There's nothing coming from the side of the object. It's merely labeled 100% outwardly, one direction, independence on a valid basis that functions. We can label a particular object as what, we know it to be. But there's nothing coming from the side of the object that is that, tree, computer, person, whatever it may be. So things do not exist from the side of their basis of designation. There is a basis of designation and it functions, and we've all come together and agreed conventionally that it can be labeled as that. But when we search for whatever we've labeled, the person, we won't find it existing amongst any of the five aggregates. We won't find it within the aggregates. We won't find it as a collection of the aggregates. There is no self to be found within the aggregates. The self, the person, the I, is merely labeled by mind independence on body and mind, or independence on body, speech, and mind, or independence on the five aggregates. Merely labeled 100% outwardly. There's nothing from within the body and mind that is the I. So, amazing. So this is like with all phenomena, not just the self and the aggregates, but even going beyond the aggregates to whatever we grasp at and create stories, embellish, project, decorate, exaggerate, attributes that do not exist within those attributes at all. And then in dependence on those, we engage with further afflictions. So not just this ignorance, but with all this extra decorating and superimposing, then, attachment, grasping, clinging, craving, all of this, or aversion and so forth. So I was thinking from the chapter 6 in the Golden Light Sutra, it says, that's a chapter on emptiness, and it says something quite beautiful there that I thought might be just worth sharing with you if you like. Down the bottom of the first page, it says, the eye sense runs after forms, the ear sense indulges in sounds, the nose sense captures numerous smells, the tongue sense always hunts tastes, the body sense pursues tactile sensations, and the mental sense grasps at phenomena. And I just find that quite beautiful when I get to that chapter in reciting it, because it is like that, you know. So just when we reflect on our own types of addictions, some people, you know, we have addictions to food, or we certainly have cravings for food. We're always hunting certain tastes. We wouldn't be satisfied with dal and rice every day. You know, we're always seeking, hunting, pursuing, trying to, you know, seek happiness in this outside world. We're always going outer rather than within. We're trying to seek lasting happiness through our senses, and just, you know, becoming so engrossed in them, and through that perpetuating samsara, perpetuating our craving and grasping, and again taking rebirth in samsara. And the other quote that came to mind, I can read to you from Patrul Rinpoche in Words of My Perfect Teacher, because I like to do these two parts together. So he says, this is how the moth dies in the lamp flame, because its visual consciousness is attracted to forms. How the stage is killed by the hunter. The stag, sorry, I typed it up yesterday and I made a typing error. The stag is killed by the hunter, because its hearing draws it to sounds. How bees are swallowed by carnivorous plants, seduced by their smell. How fish are caught with bait, their sense of taste lured by its flavor. How elephants drown in the swamp because they love the physical feeling of mud. So once again, it is like that for all of us, you know. We believe what appears inherently existent, we believe, we entrust exists like that. We chase after it, we pursue it, we're attracted, we're drawn in, we're seduced, we're like lured into the pursuit of physical sense pleasures. And this is how we're perpetuating again and again our suffering. So if we can you know, try to develop some sort of distance from the latching on, and simply, you know, whatever arises, without all the conceptual storylines and the chasing and the grasping and the pursuing. You know, in the scene, there is the scene, you know, just let it be the scene. In the herd, let it be the herd. I'm quite noise sensitive, right? So you know, if I'm trying to do prayers or meditations or something like this, and people gathering outside where I live and chatting and laughing and carrying on, you know, it's like so annoying. But if a kookaburra with a delightful laugh that actually reminds me of Rinpoche, because he made reference about kookaburras, was, you know, laughing away in the background, I'd just be filled with delight and joy. So it depends on the storyline I tell myself in relation to the sound. And when I can't control the sound, which is, you know, usually the way, if we can do a meditation on the sound, of just letting there just be the sound without all the conceptual storyline, then I don't go to aversion, I don't go to attachment, and it's just much easier. Just in the sound, let there be the sound. You know, in the smelled, let there be the smelled. In the taste, the taste. The felt, the felt. The thought, without all that decorating and chasing and pursuing. So anyway, that's sort of some things that come to mind in relation to the 5 aggregates not being observed, the 12 sources, the 18 elements. So none of these are observed in the sight of that Arya being on the path of meditation, that meditative equipoise, non-conceptually realizing emptiness. So because they're not observed, they're not inherently existent. There is no inherently existent form, no inherently existent sound, no inherently existent odor, and so forth. Okay, no inherently existent phenomena. So then on the path of meditation, we now get to the 12 links. So we saw how we perpetuate our suffering with these 5 aggregates and the 12 sources and the 18 elements, pursuing and chasing after and hunting, craving, grasping after, external pleasures, and even, craving after internal pleasures in the sense of inherently existent pleasure and so forth. So now we turn our mind to even look at, so these were the objects that we have to stop the clinging and craving to related to samsara. But even as we pursue a path towards liberation, we still need to stop that craving and grasping and clinging to the various things of nirvana, right? The pursuit of nirvana. So when we get to this section that says there is no ignorance, and so on, up to including no aging and death, that's talking about the 12 links of dependent arising, going in that forward order of how, in dependence on this ignorance, grasping at an inherently existent self, we create actions, which those karmic imprints get deposited onto our mental consciousness. And, at the time of death, through craving and grasping, we ripen a karmic imprint and take rebirth and have these name and form, this body and mind, projected under karma and the 6 sources and, feeling and contact firstly, and then feeling, and once again perpetuate this craving and grasping. So this is how we continually circle in cyclic existence. But even if we were to reverse that and realize that there is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, right? So if there is no extinction of ignorance and no aging, no extinction of aging and death, even if we extinguish no ignorance and therefore create no karmic imprint, and therefore do not deposit that karmic imprint under the power of ignorance on our mental consciousness and so forth, if we come to stop taking rebirth under the control of karma and afflictions, if we can stop that, if we stop aging with birth, we stop aging and death, and we stop all the sufferings of samsara. So if we realize that there is no ignorance, if we stop ignorance or extinguish ignorance, then we're going to extinguish aging and death. It might be easier to have a look at. So I've got a chart here. So with the 12 links, we talk about entering into samsara, which is what we call the thoroughly afflicted class, in dependence on true origins, taking true suffering. And then when we reverse our samsara to attain liberation, nirvana, enlightenment, then we're talking about the completely pure class, the way of exiting. So what we're talking about is don't cling to any of this. So once again, if we perpetuate our suffering through ignorance, we perpetuate all of our cyclic existence in dependence on ignorance and craving and grasping, these 3 afflictions and the 2 karmas, compositional factors in existence, in dependence on the 3 afflictions and the 2 karmas, true origins, we create true suffering, body and mind, name and form, body and mind, the 5 aggregates, the 6 sense powers, 6 sources, contact, feeling, and we take birth and age and so forth. So if we can stop ignorance, then we stop compositional factors. If we stop compositional factors, the karma won't get imprinted onto the mental consciousness. If we can stop the karmic process happening like that, we won't take name and form, body and mind, under the power of karma, because we've stopped ignorance. So if we extinguish ignorance, we extinguish all that arises in dependence on it. So therefore we extinguish aging and death. Can you see what I'm saying? So there's no inherently existent ignorance, and there's no inherently existent extinguishing of that ignorance. There's no inherently existent age and death, there's no inherently existing extinguishing of aging and death. So whether we enter into samsara or exit out of samsara, in dependence on these 12 links of dependent origination, none of them inherently exist, whether it be on the side of entering into samsara or achieving liberation. Nothing inherently exists. The wisdom realizing the lack of inherent existence, that wisdom mind does not inherently exist. The object it's realizing, emptiness, does not inherently exist. Emptiness is empty of inherent existence. All phenomena are empty of inherent existence. So there is nothing to cling to, even on the side of reversing our samsara to achieve the goal of liberation and enlightenment. Okay? So that's what we're talking about. None of these appear to that meditative equipoise, non-conceptually realizing emptiness. If they did appear, they would inherently exist. So not even the results that we're striving for inherently exist. Nothing inherently exists. It is not found when searched for, and therefore what is found is the lack, the emptiness of the inherent existence, the lack of inherent existence. So then we get to this stage here. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. So there we're talking about that Arya's exalted knowledge, meditative equipoise, non-conceptually realizing emptiness, that Arya being now progressed from the path of seeing to the path of meditation, habituating, familiarizing with such a meditation on emptiness, to that Arya being's wisdom mind, there is no observing even the Four Noble Truths. There is no observing the objects, the Four Noble Truths. There is no observing true, here it says no suffering, no true suffering, no true origins, no true cessation, no true path. These are not observed. There is no inherently existent true suffering. There is no ultimate to be found, inherently existent, ultimate true origins. And even true cessations do not have that ultimate existence. So inherent existence. There is no true paths. Even the exalted wisdom doing the realization, the mind itself, which is the path. A path is a consciousness generally. So this path itself, this exalted wisdom, even that does not inherently exist. There is no appearance of inherently existent exalted wisdom. And because the inherent existence is so fused with the conventional object itself, even the conventional object is not appearing. So there is nothing observed except the lack of inherent existence, the emptiness of inherent existence. So even the path, the mind realizing, the exalted wisdom realizing emptiness, even that does not appear. So there is no conventionality appearing, not even the mind doesn't appear, that itself even doesn't appear to that wisdom mind realizing emptiness. Only emptiness is appearing. So in this way, the Four Noble Truths, whether we're looking at entering samsara under true origins, creating true sufferings, cause and effect, right? So true origins, remember it was like ignorance, craving and grasping, and karma, your compositional factors and existence, or sometimes translated as becoming. These true origins bring about our true suffering, our body and mind under the control of karma and afflictions. So the 12 links are elaborated on the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are the 12 links condensed, okay? True suffering comes about in dependence on true origins. So whether we enter into cyclic existence that way, or whether we develop true paths that sees that the antidote to this ignorance, grasping at inherent existence, is the wisdom realizing the lack of inherent existence, It's a true and correct mind to overpower this wrong consciousness, this erroneous mind, this wisdom mind. Not only is it true and correct, but it is built up in dependence on reasons and logic. It has a really valid basis. And therefore, having that opposite mode of apprehension to ignorance grasping at a self can totally devour it, overpower it, because it's the actual antidote. So developing this true path, the main one being this wisdom realizing emptiness, we can reverse our samsara, overcome ignorance and all that follows on from ignorance. So we can extinguish ignorance, therefore extinguish aging and death under the control of karma afflictions and so forth. So all of these things, whatever we try to cling to in samsara, or even if as Dharma practitioners aspiring for liberation, we still are not to cling to that. So not to grasp at and see it as inherently existent and trust in those appearances. So none of these are found to exist in the sight of that Arya's exalted knowledge and meditative equipoise. So the attainment that we're seeking, this enlightenment, there is no attainment, no inherently existent attainment. The Buddha's qualities, talk about the 10 powers and the 4 fearlessnesses and so forth. None of the qualities of a Buddha inherently exist. Buddhahood does not inherently exist. Okay? And even if we haven't yet attained Buddhahood, this non-attainment, we haven't yet got there. But even at the various stages across the 10 grounds, the non-attainment of Buddhahood, okay, even that non-attainment doesn't inherently exist. So we're elaborating here for the people who require more words to understand. If we just gave the pith instruction, many of us wouldn't understand, and we need this elaboration. So this dialogue between Arya Avalokiteshvara to Venerable Shariputra is elaborating in an extensive, see here, extensive answer, just how a bodhisattva will progress across the 5 paths to attain the 5th path, the path of no more learning. So even while that bodhisattva hasn't yet attained this non-attainment, not yet attained enlightenment, even all of those stages of the path do not inherently exist. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so then Avalokiteshvara continues and he says, Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom. So here, and sometimes with the next paragraph, but I've shaded it out a bit because I'm not going to talk about it in relation to this topic, the topic being the path of meditation, the 10th ground, bodhisattva's meditative equipoise. Some do put it here, and that's why I've got it there, but shaded, but I will talk about it separately. So just those first 2 lines there, here, what we're talking about now on the path of meditation is when we get to the 10th ground. So we've traversed from the 1st ground as an Arya being all the way through, abandoned the afflictive obscurations, become pure on the 8th, 9th, 10th ground. And now we're at that last moment of a sentient being's existence before we attain Buddhahood. So that very last moment of a sentient being mind, they talk about that uninterrupted path, UP I've abbreviated, that meditative equipoise, that uninterrupted path, which is the actual powerful antidote to abandon even the subtlest knowledge obscurations. So this uninterrupted path is a meditative equipoise, non-conceptually realizing emptiness. They call it the Vajra-like concentration. It's the final sentient being mind before we attain Buddhahood. So that Vajra-like concentration is the direct cause for Buddhahood. It's the actual antidote to all of the extremely subtle, like small, very, very, very subtle, not from the perfection vehicle, those knowledge obscurations, the very subtle, the small of the small and so forth. So if we've abandoned the gross stains, and then even, different levels of stains, and then now to the really subtle level, we've abandoned, we now have the powerful antidote present to abandon those. So we haven't yet abandoned them. When we abandon them is when we attain Buddhahood. Knowledge obscurations, some call it cognitive obscurations, by definition is that which hinders omniscience. So they hinder our attainment of omniscience. They are the cause, they are the imprints of our ignorance, why we have appearances of true existence now with every other mind we have that's not this, meditative equipoise. And so what's happening here is we are going to abandon them because we have the powerful antidote present, realizing the lack of inherent existence. But we haven't yet abandoned them because we're still a sentient being on the 10th ground, that prior moment to enlightenment. When we have abandoned them, we attain enlightenment. Okay? So we've got the actual antidote present. So the analogy is like a thief. We've thrown the thief out of the house, but the door is yet to be shut behind him. Okay, so that's the analogy they use. So which happens when we've shut the door behind him, then we're fully abandoned. We're fully abandoned, thrown out the thief, shut the door, like it's fully gone. At that time, when we've shut the door, that's when we attain a liberated path. We are liberated from those subtle knowledge obscurations. We have been liberated from all knowledge obscurations at that point. That liberated path is the beginning of the path of no more learning, Buddhahood, the 5th path. Okay? So we transfer through this meditative equipoise, non-conceptually realizing emptiness, having that powerful antidote present, realizing the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena, so powerful that it even abandons even the small knowledge obscurations. So that being so present in our mind, it's powerful enough to throw the thief out. And then in that next moment, when we have abandoned the knowledge obscurations, we've shut the door, we've achieved a liberated path. That liberated path is enlightenment, omniscience, the path of no more learning. So Shariputra, it said, therefore, because there is no inherently existent attainment, bodhisattvas rely on, so there's this reliance, this dependence, reliance on the perfection of wisdom. So in dependence on the perfection of wisdom, we can achieve Buddhahood. We can abandon all that is to be abandoned. So I'm saying here, some say this entire section, including this other paragraph, can be applied to the 10th ground bodhisattvas. Some apply it in part to the 10th, the Vajra-like concentration. And then some apply this to the path of no more learning. Some say both apply. There's just different, commentaries and so forth we can find. But the one I'm preferring to use and rely on is looking at the path of no more learning, Buddhahood, in relation to this part of the verse that says, the mind without obscuration and without fear, having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. So this path of no more learning, Buddhahood, okay, one has completely abandoned all obscurations. Remember Buddha in Tibetan, Sangye. So Sangye, the 2 syllables, first has completely exhausted all that is to be overcome, has completely abandoned the 2 obscurations, afflictive obscurations, knowledge obscurations, and Sangye has expansion of realizations, realizes all phenomena. So this mind without obscuration and without fear, I've got here, remaining in this absorption, so the Buddha never arises from this meditative equipoise. The bodhisattva will, in dependence on the perfection of wisdom, attain final awakening. So This final awakening or Buddhahood can be called non-abiding nirvana. Why is it non-abiding? Well, it's a liberated path, okay, having abandoned all the knowledge obscurations, and all fear has come to an end. So one no longer fears the obscurations. A bodhisattva can have fear, and one of the fears that they can use, remember fear and faith as causes for refuge, one of the fears, instead of the fear of the lower realms, fear of samsara, the bodhisattva can use this fear of knowledge obscurations, because that's hindering them in achieving enlightenment to extensively benefit sentient beings in each moment, effortlessly, spontaneously, enacting their welfare. So the Buddha has abandoned those fears. The Buddha has fearlessness. Okay. So that's one of the reasons I prefer this presentation of the path of normal learning applying to that verse. All fear has come to an end. So what's this non-abiding nirvana? Well, the Buddha does not abide in samsara, the extreme of samsara, or the extreme of nirvana. So the Buddha is not a samsaric being. The Buddha does benefit sentient beings and sends forth manifestations to the abode of samsara, but is not samsaric. Okay, so the Buddha doesn't abide in samsara, in that extreme of samsara, without developing the perfection of wisdom to achieve the goal of enlightenment, and doesn't abide in the extreme of nirvana, where it is absorbed in one's own meditative equipoise for one's own benefit, where they cannot extensively achieve even their own goals, but cannot even extensively achieve the goal of others. So they don't abide in the extreme of samsara, unable to benefit sentient beings by not achieving liberation or enlightenment, but they don't abide in nirvana, in mere liberation as well, where they're not able to fully benefit themselves or others. So they don't abide in these two extremes of samsara or nirvana. So it's non-abiding in samsara, non-abiding in nirvana. It's beyond samsara, beyond even mere nirvana, to achieve this non-abiding nirvana of enlightenment, the fully awakened state. So the Buddhas of the three times, whether it be past, present, and future, they have to, all the Buddhas of the past, the present, and the future have to rely on this perfection of wisdom to achieve that goal of non-abiding nirvana, to achieve enlightenment, to go beyond worldly existence, to go beyond achieving personal peace of mere liberation. So it's unsurpassable, because there's no goal more supreme than this, enlightenment. It's perfect in knowledge, perfected, fully a perfected state, the realization of the truth of all phenomena. The Dharmakaya becomes manifest here. So realizing that liberated path, having abandoned the knowledge obscurations, that final moment of a sentient being's continuum, that Vajra-like concentration, no longer a sentient being, a non-Buddha, one's become in that next moment of Buddhahood, achieve the Dharmakaya, realizing all phenomena, the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena, realizing the two truths. So in the perspective of that Buddha's meditative equipoise, realizing reality, only emptiness appears. But from the perspective of the exalted knowledge of meditative equipoise, the Buddha has realizing conventionalities, realizing diversity, then those conventionalities appear. So the Buddha can, with one mind, realize the two truths, the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. So that's something unique on the Buddha ground, that the Bodhisattva prior and all sentient beings prior have to realize them alternately. Okay, but now there's no alternation on the stage of a Buddha. The path of normal learning can realize the two truths simultaneously, even in one mind. So the Buddha has become perfect in knowledge, perfected, consummated one's wisdom and love and ability to benefit sentient beings, and fully abandoned all that's to be abandoned, fully ripened all that is to be ripened in qualities to effortlessly and spontaneously enact the welfare of others, that sort of thing. So fully perfected one's own welfare, and fully perfected can fully perfect the welfare of others too. So this is the what have I got? It is in this way that the reliance on the path perfection of wisdom. So prior to Buddhahood, so we're developing the path as a bodhisattva, for instance. In this way, in reliance on the path perfection of wisdom, all the Buddhas of the past and the present have practiced. They've developed the path, transversing the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation to attain Buddhahood. So, and all of the future Buddhas, they will also practice in the same way to attain the resultant perfection of wisdom. So one's a path perfection of wisdom, where we're practicing the path as a sentient being to attain the resultant perfection of wisdom, which is omniscience. So we're engaging in the practice of the perfection of wisdom. We haven't yet perfected it. It's as a path, as a sentient being, like a bodhisattva, for instance, we're engaging in the practice of the perfection of wisdom. When we have perfected it, then that's the resultant state of omniscience. So that, I believe, let's see what I had. I think that might be it for how much I want to cover in the recitation. So last week and things like that, I did issue some homework of things that would be good to look at, some different exercises. Was anyone able to practice any of those exercises last week? So what did I do? Let me think. What did I do? Let's just escape out of, what was the homework that we did last? We looked at the path of seeing. So we were trying to develop mind's training that, for instance, whatever sound we heard, whatever, you could do it as a walking meditation, right? Whatever sounds or sights or smells or even leftover tastes and all of these things, that whatever appears is not true. Whatever appears is that inherent existence covering that object. So it appears inherently existent sounds, tastes, and so forth. That was one of the exercises, that whatever you see, hear, smell, etc., all appears inherently. And the idea to practice was to not buy into appearances, to entrust in appearances and believe them and hold on to them, but to see them as not true, as false, because the path of seeing, the bodhisattva realized for the first time non-conceptually emptiness and saw the truth, saw that the way things exist is in lacking inherent existence. What appeared was emptiness, the lack of inherent existence. And how does it exist? Is by lacking inherent existence. So that was the only true mind. And so every other mind, to all of our senses and so forth, even our mental consciousness outside of that meditative equipoise, is false. So whatever appears is not true. Jay, you've got something to share with us.
Yes, and it isn't more of a question than anything else. So I have tried to do this previously, the practice you
Yes.
just discussed.
Thank you.
Okay. What happens is I have a profound sense of disconcertion, because I feel like I'm entering the Twilight Zone or some science fiction movie where I am questioning reality. What I see is not really here. So I sort of trigger into all of the science fiction, fantasy movies, etc. I would have seen. And just, yeah, there's an uncomfortableness about that. And I'm suspecting I may not be the only one experiencing that.
Okay.
Well, Robina has told me that before, because this is an ongoing issue for me.
Okay.
Is trying to question the conventional reality makes me extremely uncomfortable. I'm a pragmatic kind of person, what you see is what you get kind of gal.
Sure.
And but at the same time, obviously wanting to expand my horizons. So I don't know exactly what to do with this other than live with it. So if you've got any comments about that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Venerable Robina would know, like, better than I would. So whatever advice she's given you, take that. My suggestions
She
would
did
be...
not give me advice. She simply
Okay.
identified that this was not an uncommon thing. That's all
Okay.
further got on that.
Nice. So what I would suggest is we all need to increase our merit, all of us, right? So even the bodhisattvas are accumulating 3 countless great eons of merit, So I would suggest that what is useful when I hear what you're saying, Jay, is to increase one's merit. That's number one, because this takes a lot of merit even to hear teachings on the Heart Sutra. So we already have a lot of merit, but we need to increase it so that we can understand it, overcome the obstacles that we have internally that throw up obstacles for us of why we're uncomfortable or can't digest this or feel like we're entering into some science fiction twilight thing. Okay, so that I would say is coming out of a lack of merit. So increase merit. Then I would suggest that petition, for instance, we did the practice of Manjushri, but we did it in a way that we've only got an hour and a half for these teachings. Do it as a half-hour practice, and the Amarappasanadi and all of these things, sit with that and do 5 malas or 10 malas or something. Petition your guru, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or whoever is your teacher, or Shakyamuni Buddha, whoever is your teacher. If it's, say, His Holiness, for instance, petition His Holiness, inseparable from Guru Manjushri, and try to soften the heart through one's guru devotion, so that it's not just some intellectual trip. We're not just being questioning reality and so forth. We're trying to we're trying to understand the teachings of the Buddha here. And the teachings of the Buddha are for the purpose of liberation. And so we do very well without instruction, without a guru. We do very well. Samsara is very familiar to us. But if we're trying to turn upside down our samsara, to turn it on its head, to develop, as Arya Deva says, even just a little bit of doubt can shake the foundations of samsara. So of course it's going to feel like we're going into some sort of twilight zone type of thing, because our concrete world is becoming upside down. So even just to generate a doubt, thinking maybe it is like that, even that takes a lot of merit. So coming back again to accumulating merit, relying wholeheartedly on the guru, having trust in the teachings of the Buddha. And when the time is ripe, one will develop the understanding. Also, instead of looking from the point of view of emptiness of inherent existence, remember the other side of the coin is the conventional truth side of the coin, dependent arising. The meaning's the same, whether we look at ultimate truth perspective or conventional truth perspective. So I would suggest get comfortable with the conventional side of the truth, the conventional reality. So look at how things are dependently related. You can be the biggest pragmatist in the world, not fall into sci-fi type, realities, which, is more far-fetched than science, and just deal with how things are dependent on cause and conditions. Causality is dependency, right? If things depend, then they are not independent. And independent, you can think of independent or inherently existent, same thing. So because things are dependent on causes and conditions, and they come together, a table, a computer, the person comes together in relation to various parts, there's another level of dependency. Start with these 2 levels of dependency and see how phenomena come together and function in dependence on causes and conditions and parts. What that is saying is that things are not independent. They're not inherently existent. Therefore, if they're not inherently existent, they lack inherent existence. So even that can bring us closer to the truth of realizing emptiness eventually. Then if you feel comfortable, Jay, then look at the other more subtle level of dependency, that things depend on being merely labeled by the mind. If I was to search for the person in this body and mind, well, if I search within the body, which part of the body is the I, the me, the I, the person? Which part of the body or the collection coming together is the I? And we see that we can't be found in relation to the body or a part of the body because we think, we feel, and all of these sorts of things which are not body related. Okay. That even just having a memory is not body related. So investigate the mind. And then which mind? Am I my anger? Well, no, because I have sadly attachment and greed and jealousy and pride, and I have love and compassion and virtue, like faith and so forth. So which mind am I? When I search amongst the mind, which mind am I? Which collection of minds am I? Which moment of mind am I? And there's only one I, this person, and yet there's this multitude of parts. And so I cannot be a part because there will be a multitude of me's, I's, and so persons. And so when we search them, then you can start to come closer to see how the self is not found within the body, within the mind, within the collection of body and mind, because because the self is merely labeled in dependence on a body and mind coming together and functioning in a particular way of speaking and so forth. And so that gets more subtle, Jay, and I would suggest maybe just starting, rather than going to the merely labeled, maybe start with causality. And then even look at, the parts. And this is showing is dependency. What it's showing is by dependency, it's not independent. It's not inherently existent. Therefore, it's empty of inherent existence. It's empty of self-existence. It's a dependent arising. So start with accumulation of merit, petitioning the guru, working on dependency. And then revisit. So don't develop aversion for this sci-fi mentality of, thinking, oh, it's all a bit out there and I'm losing, my pragmatism, my pragmatic ways of how reality exists for you right now, rather than discard it, which would be, very sad. Then just slowly build up one's accumulations of merit and wisdom through dependent arising. And when the time is right, then through an investigation and through a valid teacher and so forth, one can come closer to understanding from the other perspective that things are, what is this meaning of, things being false and not true, and, questioning like that. Would that be okay as an answer to give you some sort of direction?
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for sharing as well. Kodo, you're always good for a question or two. What's your question?
That was just fantastic. Thank you, Jay, for asking. Well, my background is in sciences, and I used to teach chemistry. So even from college, I, would boggle my mind out that everything is just a collection of vibrating atoms. And then, of course, now the scientists say there's not really atoms and this and that. Even the atoms are dependent on arising from the other parts, the electrons, protons, and all these quarks and whatever these kooky names are now.
Exactly, yeah.
And so that's how I enter an emptiness, is through the atoms. And sometimes I really get into, I recite the Heart Sutra in Japanese because I come from a different background.
Wow.
And I do it for hours some days, especially when I clean the center. I plug in and I get to work and do it. And sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes I have this this experience that everything, as far as my eyes see, and even my imaginative mind kind of goes and explodes, and everything is shimmering atoms.
Right.
And this happened to me a month or two ago when I was driving to work in the morning reciting the sutra. And what happened is tears started flowing automatically. I didn't try, but I felt my self-cherishing I in the center of my body, and I could feel the edges of it too start to dissolve.
Okay.
And this huge fear, just this like I'm being annihilated, some kind of annihilation fear came up, and then boom, the whole shimmering experience stopped, and I went back to the solidity
Exactly.
of the cars and the road. But
Exactly.
for 2 seconds, it was like the domino effect out into the universe,
Yeah.
But
So-
and what is this aching? Is it ego? What is this feeling of fear that arises?
Yeah.
It's just like terrifying.
Sure. Well, yeah, fearing annihilation, right? Fearing that how I've seen myself to exist, right? For beginningless time, and will be endlessly unless we realize this. So, so the way I've held myself to exist, I don't exist that way. So there is this fear or annihilation that you're going to go out of existence, because it's almost like the way things appear to us inherently existing do not appear. And it feels like even that there is no self that is experiencing it, because there is no appearance of that self there. And so it's as if everything goes out of existence. Now, when that comes up, fear definitely can arise, because the self-grasping I holds on, doesn't give up the fight. It's getting annihilated. You're not. The conventionally existent self is still going to go on existing. That's not being annihilated. But remember, these two are so fused together, the conventionally existent self and the inherently existent self. This inherently existent self is what dominates the show. It's what protects what's mine, me and mine. Okay, and gives rise to all the fear and the aversion and all of the storylines and everything. Okay, it's from there that we accumulate all the negative karma and perpetuate suffering. And this I, this inherently existent I, okay, is under attack. It fears it's going out of existence, so it's grabbing on and holding on to dear life. It's holding on to the conventionally existent I, okay, because the inherently existent I doesn't exist at all. We believe it to exist. We have an appearance of it because we've got an imprints of ignorance, beginningless imprints of ignorance. So things appear to inherently exist, but they don't exist inherently at all. They have never existed inherently. There has never been an inherently existent I from the beginning, even now. But there is this appearance. Things appear to exist inherently, even though they do not. So it's holding on for a dear life, and it's going to fear its annihilation. And then from that grasping, it's going to bring up the fear, and all of whatever you experience is going to come back as concrete as it ever was, and so forth, because now it's running the show again. Okay, so what we need to do is develop our understanding, and we need to go through the fear, and we are not being annihilated. The conventionally existent self will remain, but it will not appear, because it's so fused with the inherently existent self. And when the inherently existent self goes out of existence, the appearance disappears. With that appearance disappearing, the conventionally existent self also will not appear. But it's not that it doesn't exist. It does exist, the conventionally existent self, but it's so fused, it's not going to appear at that time. And so we need to go through the fear and, see it as like, if we can get to the other side go through the fear and get to the other side of it, so the fear doesn't come up and stop everything, but we can pursue and go through. That's what we need to do. So the more we can come to see that things are I'm going to show you what your homework is for this week, but it's not for everybody because some people may find it not helpful or want to practice some of the other things that we've gone through. I do that every time. Why do I do that, my friend? Okay. So I'm not showing you emptiness of the experiment. I just need to click. There we go. So one of the exercises good to develop, from what we've done the last couple of weeks, is to look at the I, the self, whatever action we're engaged in, and the object we're engaged in. Before we were doing merely labeled I, merely labeled walking on a merely labeled path. And Jay, that might be a good one to progress to, the one we did back in the first or second week, because that's a really good exercise to do ongoingly. But anyway, this one is what the I, the agent, the person, the action, the object, all 6 sense objects, whatever is appearing as something real, as something inherent, as something, I look over there and I see table, I see water bowl, I see tanka, I see vase. Everything just appears to my senses as if it is that, as if it's existing right there, findable. When I search for vase, there's vase, without depending on parts and without depending on cause and conditions, without depending on the mind labeling it vase and so forth. It appears independently, something real. But these appearances, and this is not for everyone, remember, these appearances are not real. They're not inherent. So what is appearing is if it's not merely labeled by the mind. So see what is appearing as a hallucination. Okay? What's appearing as real is not real. It appears as real, but it's not real. Now, what we're talking about here is the object of negation. Do you see how I have abbreviated here? OON, the object of negation. What is the object of negation? Inherent existence. That is the object that is appearing and is the hallucination. We are not saying the conventionally existent self or action or something, the one that is merely labeled by the mind. We're not saying that doesn't exist. We would fall to extremes. That's wrong thinking. When we say things do not inherently exist, we're saying how they don't exist that way. How do they exist? They exist dependently this way. So we always bring in the dependency, right? When we refute how it exists this way, we're saying instead it exists in this way. It does not exist this way. It does exist this way. So we're refuting the inherent existence and bringing in the dependent arising. Things are mutually dependent. So that could be one exercise, particularly if you were dealing with problems and so forth, difficult people, difficult situations, whatever's going on for us, it's appearing as inherently existent rather than latching onto it and going down the path of conceptualizing big storylines and, all the things we tell ourselves and the afflictions and so forth. Try to see things as an hallucination. Or just quickly, we're running out of time. Or this is a dream. Now, in a dream, we get the tiger who attacks us and, it seems very real. And even during the dream, even when we wake up from the dream, we still have that lingering fear and stress and, the remnants of the dream. So instead of believing the dream as real, okay, real dream, real tiger attacking a real me, and real, fear and worry and so forth, try to bring our waking life to recognize that what is appearing, the inherently existent part, that is appearing, and it's recognizing it as a dream. Now, if this is too much, because what we're talking about here is only the inherent existence, what doesn't exist. Inherent existence doesn't exist. It's a hallucination when it appears. It's a dream when it appears. What we're talking about is this object of negation. Be very super clear. We're not talking about everything, all phenomena are a hallucination. That's rubbish. All phenomena are a dream. That's rubbish. Things do exist. How do they exist? Dependently. What we're talking about is the object to be negated, when things appear inherently. That's not true. Things do not exist independently, inherently. That is what is like a dream or a hallucination. It doesn't exist as it appears. Okay, be very clear on what the exercises are doing so that we don't fall to extremes. If you're going to fall to extremes, you're better off falling to the extreme that everything inherently exists. Okay, but I would advise it's best not to fall to an extreme and to find the middle way. All right, let's conclude quickly with this recitation from the rest of the Heart Sutra, and because we're running out of time. We've gone over time. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata gate gate para samgate bodhisoha. And so we can just, this is where you would see at Guru Shakyamuni Buddha in front, remember? At his heart, Prajna Paramita, and at her heart, the mantra around the syllable A. And we could, if we had the leisure of time, recite the mantra. So we'll just do it one time with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you've indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharavattaputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gadavas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Okay, so let's do just a couple of dedications. Due to this merit, may I attain the enlightened state of a Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. For His Holiness, long life, incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And then this verse only for the swift return of Kabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. I think that might be all. Yes, we can end on those dedications. So thank you, everyone. And I'm happy to answer any more questions if there are more questions. And I'm happy to go over time. We can even stop the recording if we need, or however you wish to pursue. Or we can just meet up next week for our last session. Can you believe it? Okay, so everyone's happy? Yeah. If you'd like to recite the Heart Sutra, it'd be wonderful to do, and maybe do some of those exercises, because that's really how we take the teachings from today and put them into practice and make it a daily lived experience. That's really critical. So yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. And